Well, folks, that was it was a little too predictable. Indiana stormed into Iowa City and found a way to beat the Hawkeyes on Thursday night. And then we met old friend Buzz Killington on Sunday afternoon, and Rutgers came to Bloomington and won by 4. We're going to recap those two games, dive into what the team should do with this week off, and then we're going to allot some time, especially to the Indiana women's program, and they deserve more than a few minutes of our time tonight. We could have made the whole show about this team, but we're going to separate a whole segment to that team to catch you up if you haven't watched them this year, and then talk about them more if you do follow them. So all in all, really excited for episode 179 of the Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. Our mission and goal is simple. We want to bring in-depth analysis and coverage to Indiana University sports to as many fans as possible across a multitude of modern platforms. We are recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on January 26, 2021, where I'm your host, Nithin Krishnan. Here with me tonight, as usual, podcast co-host Matt Lukens. Matt, wild week. Let's start with the game on Thursday. I know it was a while ago, 5 days ago now. We're not going to spend too much time on it. But what was your reaction to how Indiana was playing during the game on Thursday night? And then what was your immediate reaction after they comfortably won by 12 against the number 4 ranked team in the country?
Yeah, so my reaction was, I told you. We talked about this on the last podcast. You asked me if we were to pull off the miracle and beat a top 10 team, top 5 team, which Archie's never done in his entire career, and go into Iowa City and beat the Hawkeyes, what we would need to do. And I said, we were going to need help from the bench. You got help from the bench this game. Anthony Neal came off the bench, 5 points. Geronimo played some of the biggest, most important minutes this year of any player. The 10 minutes that Geronimo gave us off the bench was fantastic.
He was awesome.
He was great. 7 points off the bench. Lander gave us 4 and didn't have a stat to show for it, but he gave us 4 minutes of rest for another guard.
Yep.
Which is about all you can ask for him at this point. Best game of the year for Rob Finney. I said somebody other than Trace and Armand was going to have to step up. 18 points from Rob Finney will do that for you. 14 from your senior, and Al will also help. And then I said one last thing, and that was that Iowa was going to have to shoot terribly from the field. And oh, boy, did they shoot terribly. They were 5 of 23 on threes. We shot 47% at 8 of 17. We win the game. We shot free throws like we have the last 4 years, which drove me insane. Definitely could have won by more, but an 81-69 win in Iowa City was absolutely deserving. We won the game. We played fantastic defense. It wasn't like they were just missing 3-pointers either. They were feeling the pressure of Indiana's defense and the closeouts and the connectedness, the togetherness of our defense was so much on display that not Bart Torvik, but Jordan Sperber of what's his website's name? I can't remember. I think it's
we'll find it for
Index, Basketball Focus, whatever
we'll
it is. Jordan Sperber, who you must follow on for all things college basketball, especially like the in-depth stats, ended up tweeting out an entire clip about how good the pack line defense was for Indiana against Iowa, which is something that hasn't happened in Archie Miller's tenure and usually happens if you have a really good defensive team. So that kudos to the team for playing extremely well and together and fighting through. And, shout outs to my boy. Some people are in our chat were asking who is the unsung hero. And I just want to shout out Race Thompson for this game because he had 1 point and he was in foul trouble and he was going through a lot of things. But his 4 assists, his passing was really good. And his 5 rebounds, we needed rebounds from him. And he was guarding the best player in the country and Luka Garza all night and made Luka work for everything. So shout out Race Thompson. 1 point makes it look like he had a terrible game. He didn't have a great game, but he did what he had to do to help us win, and that's all we can ask for the players, which is apparently a lot. Apparently too much to happen 2 games in a row, but we'll take the 1 game thing. this win was very exciting. I thoroughly enjoyed Indiana basketball for a couple days. It was great.
Look, I'll be perfectly honest with you, Matt, and with the people who listen to our podcast. My immediate reaction after Indiana won was, why couldn't they beat Purdue? Why couldn't they beat Northwestern?
Yeah.
Obviously, the Rutgers game hadn't happened yet. And I said, man, when this team defends the way, this was no fluke. No. When they defend the way they defend, and if they can hit a few shots, like we said last week on our podcast, Indiana's not a bad shooting team. They're just not a great shooting. They're average. Average is fine. You don't have to be, the Golden State Warriors to win games in 2021 in college basketball. You got your shots to take. Rob Finney hit one in the first few minutes. Armand Franklin hit a key one from the corner to give Indiana a nice lead. And then, of course, there was old reliable Trace Jackson Davis down low, just slogging away through foul trouble, through all sorts of problems, limiting Luka Garza, who, he had 28 points, but it took 22 shots to get there. Yeah. Jackson Davis with the cool 23-7. Jackson Davis only took 14 field goal attempts. So overall, Indiana played a great game against the Hawkeyes Thursday, especially when you consider that for the first 25 minutes or so, they weren't playing perfectly. They hung in there, they fought with it, and then really accelerated, locking down on defense. And Jordan Geronimo, we cannot go any longer without emphasizing how impressive he was in that game against the Hawkeyes. 7 points, 3 for 3 from the field. He used his fouls well. That's a small thing, but it's a big thing. Every player you get 4 before you're disqualified. And a lot of times, as we're going to get to in a little bit, fouling is a smart strategy. And Geronimo in that game against the Hawkeyes used a couple in the right moment. So overall, obviously, Hoosier Nation was thrilled with Indiana's win. They jumped up something like 10 or 12 spots in the KenPom ratings because of that to the top 25. And then, like I said earlier, they weren't able to sustain that success. The loss to Rutgers, 74-70 on Sunday afternoon. I was there on site in Assembly Hall. And again, for those of you listening, there's a very small collection of people that have watched this year's team in person. And fortunately, you're talking to 2 of them. And so, look, Indiana's effort, I know, look, a lot of times, okay, here's my immediate evaluation of the game. It's easy to use effort as a crutch. When you don't know what the problems are with your team, whether you're a fan or whether you're a coach or whether you're a player, it's easy to say, we just need to play harder, okay? I'll tell you this. The physicality and the intensity and the hustle was once again there for Indiana on Sunday, okay? It was there. Now, you can nitpick and say 1 or 2 plays here and there. They could have gotten a loose ball. They could have, had done something or another. The effort was there. What was not there was efficiency on offense and sustained intensity on defense like we saw against Iowa on Thursday. Matt, it was a 4-point final, but the game really never felt that close. Indiana didn't lead the entirety of the second half. Were you surprised? You weren't surprised, right? I mean, that felt predictable.
This team is yet to win in 2021 back-to-back games. So I am not surprised in the slightest. We just, for whatever reason, can't get off the mat. It sucks. I'll take 12 of 17 from the line. Again, Rutgers, you could talk about, we lost by 4. Rutgers shot 70% when they've been shooting 50% all year from the free throw line. That's going to happen, though. We shot 62% from 3. Some games, the numbers aren't going to be exactly the same. And this game, I think the one stat to me that tells the story is Rutgers had 7 blocks to Indiana's 2. We could not get it done inside. That is thanks to Miles Johnson, Clifford Umarui, and the rest of Rutgers' defensive pressure inside. We couldn't get our easy buckets. Trace Jackson Davis did not have his best game in Indiana.
No, he didn't. Nope.
Race Thompson played okay, but we didn't have the presence in a game like this where we were outmatched inside, especially on the offensive end, is a game that we really missed Joey Brunk. Because he gave us that solid inside presence on offense. Now, you want to complain about his defense on the other end, that's fine. But Joey, to me, would have made the world of difference in this game. And you get 9 points from Jerome Hunter off the bench, 6 points from Christian Lander, 2 points from Geronimo. Why he only plays 6 minutes in this game is another one of my questions for Archie Miller. Because you saw what he did in 10 minutes against Iowa. I don't know why you don't play him more. Leo went scoreless in 16. That's fine. We ended up shooting it really well from 3. Like, it's just the inconsistency is maddening, is it not, Nithin? Because it's like you see the defensive effort against Iowa, who is one of, if not the best offense in the country. You know, you can argue whether Gonzaga or Iowa is better. They're both fantastic offenses. And Rutgers is not known for their offense. And they were putting up 1.2 points per possession against Indiana, Indiana's defense. That, to me, that makes no sense. To me, you force them to shoot over you. To me, you play the same defense. Like, just for once, please bring one facet of the game from one game to the next, because it's so hard to watch.
Yeah, I mean, this Indiana team was brought back down to earth real quick, and I thought the start of the game played a huge role because Rutgers was a team that was reeling. They had lost 5 straight, and that game that they played on Thursday night against Penn State was hard to watch if you're a Rutgers fan. I mean, Penn State was a hungry team that hadn't played in about 10 days or so, maybe even longer than that, and Rutgers looked flat. They looked uninspired. They scratched and clawed their way back to make the score somewhat respectable at the end. And they still lost to Penn State, who won their first Big Ten game of the season against the Scarlet Knights. And then within 2.5 days, Rutgers turned it around, and they played like the hungrier, more desperate team in Bloomington. I want to emphasize the more desperate part especially. And you could see it from the start. They were playing confident. They were playing arrogant, almost too arrogant at times, right? Geo Baker got a technical in the second half just for running his mouth at Christian Lander. And look, that's the kind of arrogance that Rutgers has developed as their identity to no longer be the laughingstock of the Big Ten, whereas Indiana is still trying to figure out what their identity is, and they've tried to figure it out for the last few years. There's a stat that's been floating around that Indiana, I believe, is 2-9 after beating a top 25 team under Archie Miller. That is, they knock off a top 25 team, and they've lost 9 of the 11 games or the 12 games that they've played following that top 25 victory. Here's the thing. Both, or at least 2 of the wins, I don't remember if it's 2 out of 2 or 2 out of 3, 2 of those wins came at the end of the 2019 season when Indiana beat Wisconsin and then beat Michigan State in Romeo Langford's season. And then following that Michigan State win in Bloomington, they beat Illinois. Yeah, it's hilarious that the 2 wins sort of came together. We can go back to year 1 and remember this team in year 1 of Archie Miller at Bankers Life Fieldhouse beat Notre Dame, a really good basketball team on a clutch Juwan Morgan basket at the end, and turned it around within a few days and lost to Indiana, Purdue, Fort Wayne, IPFW at Assembly Hall by 20. And then in year 2, Indiana played their best game under Archie Miller, crushing Marquette. And then within a week, they went to Little Rock and lost to Fayetteville. I think it's Fayetteville, and lost to Arkansas by 1 point in overtime. And then you have this happen again. It was Indiana's first top 25 win of the season, and you're feeling great. And then it all comes crashing down. And look, we were the first podcast, and as far as I know, we were the only podcast in the Indiana University realm to suggest that the Hoosiers and Archie Miller, or Archie Miller and the Hoosiers, need to part ways at the end of the season. We just said it didn't feel right. Yeah. This relationship isn't working out. And it's funny because it's easy to yell into the void and say, oh, get rid of Archie Miller. Archie Miller's this, Archie Miller's that. There were four moments during that game that I observed live where I said, I disagree with what's happening here. And it's not something that comes down to player execution or whatever. Here it is. You talked about it at the start. Jordan Geronimo got no playing time in the first half. Inexcusable. 7 points, 3 for 3, guarded Luka Garza, and he didn't play in the first half. And it's even more painful to me to watch because Trace Jackson Davis, after Indiana's win on Thursday, said Geronimo was fighting with a confidence crisis in the days and weeks leading up to that Iowa game. So he must have been on cloud 9 after helping the Hoosiers beat the Hawkeyes.
Yeah.
Only to turn around on Sunday afternoon and not play a minute until the second half. And in the 6-minute stretch he played, Indiana went +5. I don't get it. The second thing, you talked about Miles Johnson and how dominant he was defensively. Well, he's a tall, big center. Okay, yeah. He doesn't skip meals. Okay, it's the weight room. All right, you know.
He definitely
let's be clear about it. He knows who he is. He embraces his physique. Okay, and in the meantime, you've got a guy like Trace Jackson Davis, an all Big Ten player, future NBA guy, who with 16 minutes to go in the second half, blew by Johnson on a perimeter drive, scored on Johnson, and drew a foul. And never again for the rest of the day did Trace Jackson Davis drive the ball into the hoop from the perimeter. And you're going, what are you doing for a guy who has such a major mismatch on an athleticism perspective to not have him look at that as an option? Third thing, with 7 minutes to go in the second half, you guys can look at this when you go back and rewatch the game if you want. Indiana got a key stop against Rutgers to trim the IU deficit to 3 points. Okay, Indiana was down by 3. They had just gotten a stop, and Christian Lander was feeling good about himself. He had his best game as a Hoosier on Sunday. He dribbled the ball deliberately across half court, and it looked like he had an idea. If he wanted to sort of clear out the floor, have the other 4 Hoosiers on the right side of the court, and he was going to operate on the left side. And it didn't mean he was going to go ISO. It just meant that he wanted to survey the court from that perspective. And Archie Miller, you can go watch the tape. You can go watch the game. Archie Miller got out and almost got in front of Christian Lander. It was almost like a defensive stance and instructed him to run a specific play. IU turned it over. Rutgers came down, hit a 3, went up 6. The Hoosiers never really were in it the rest of the way. And then you didn't foul at the end. The end. You played out a possession defensively. Rutgers is a 50-something% free throw shooting team, one of the 10 worst in the country, not just the Big Ten, 10 worst in the country. And you played it out. Miles Johnson, great center, got an offensive rebound. Rutgers got fouled, won the game. Matt, am I out of my mind here? Like it's easy to yell, Archie Miller's not the guy. But there are specific moments in the game where you say, man, he's got to be able to squeeze more juice out of this Indiana team, stealing possessions, stealing points. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think you're right. And this is something I've had a problem with. And I haven't really mentioned it on the podcast as much as I should have, and that is the offense looks too rehearsed. I think that's what you brought up, right? Christian gets a feel. He's a point guard. He's a 5-star recruit. He has talent. Like let him use his brains. If he feels like, okay, let me move everybody to the right side of the court. I'm on the left side of the court. Let's see how their defense is setting up. Let me run a play. Let him use his point guard instincts. When he's grown up, what he is trained basically since probably elementary school. Right? In Indiana, that's when you start learning basketball. Like, since he was a kid, like, let him use that. Let him grow. Like, the point, and I remember this exactly when I was watching it too. Nithin Archie gets out and gets in front. It's like, no, run this. And it's like, wait a minute. Like, let the, like, offense and basketball and the whole thing, the beauty of Bob Knight's coaching practice in the first place was everybody talked about how rigid his defense was and how important it was and how you had to play within the system in offense. But they also said that if you could do what you wanted to in the offensive system. That if you felt something some way, like an Isaiah Thomas at some point, like any of the great players that Steve Alford, we can go through a naming contest, right? Any of the guards, if they felt like they could do something in the moment, in the offense, in the flow of the game, Knight let them do that. Let them have the freedom to do that. That's what good coaches do. That's what you look. I mean, we talk about wanting Chris Beard at IU, right, as part of one of our replacements. Look what he has done with Mac McClung. Like, Mac McClung is great, and he's one of those players where at Georgetown he drove people mad because he would just take the ball and drive it at the rim because he felt like that was the play instead of feeding the big guy like it was supposed to be in the offense there at Georgetown and Ewing's offense. get that paint touch first, Matt. Get the paint touch first. In Texas, Texas Tech, he doesn't have to do that. He can just drive the ball when he wants to, when he gets the feeling. And it's been working out well. Texas Tech was just in a close game with West Virginia. They beat Kansas a couple of days ago. Texas, not Kansas. They beat Texas a couple of days ago.
Yep.
Like, it gets the best out of their players by letting them express themselves on the court. And for whatever reasons at Indiana, Archie Miller has stopped letting he's put the chains on some people. Coaching goes both ways. You have to know when. It's like poker. You got to know when to hold them. You got to know when to fold them. You got to know when to run away. You got to know how to play certain situations. And you're absolutely right, Nithin. I think he played his cards wrong there. And I think this is a recurring theme that Archie's a great coach, but he keeps playing his cards wrong. And at a certain point, for everybody, you need a reset. Right, you need to get off the craps table. You need to get off the poker table. You need to go to the bar, take a couple of drinks, and come back and reset. Right, he's been at the table too long. He's down too much money now. He needs to go back, go get a drink, talk to his friends, and come back to the table again.
He needs to go to another casino, maybe. I don't know.
Right? Yeah,
it's a little different. You can listen to our episode last week for more on that. But that's the funny thing, right? Like I'm not saying all of a sudden you got to run anarchy, Mike D'Antoni, James Harden, Houston Rockets. Everyone just do what you want. There's no structure.
No, absolutely not.
There's obviously merits to Indiana's system. They aren't one of the best offenses in the country, but they're a top 50 offense according to Ken Pom. A lot of what Archie Miller is coaching them works, but there has to be a little bit more instinct, a little bit more intuition as far as the game is concerned. And a few of the moments that I saw on Sunday really stood out to me, and those are the ones that I mentioned earlier. And then you contrast to what you saw on Thursday, right? Archie Miller was forced basically to play Jordan Geronimo.
Yeah.
He had no choice. Race Thompson picked up his fourth foul with something like 15 minutes to go in the second half. Trace Jackson-Davis had battled foul trouble all day. And it's perfectly possible that Geronimo was part of the game plan going in. But wow, when he stepped onto the court, and you can go back to our lineup analysis on Indiana HQ for more on how effective IU was on Thursday with Geronimo on the court. Indiana was outstanding under those circumstances. And once again, Geronimo was a valuable player on Sunday. But again, when you don't play in the first half, A, Archie Miller is not helping Indiana as much as he can. And B, Geronimo specifically could be a little disappointed. So one of the questions I had for you, Matt, is this. All in all, when you put everything on the balance, was last week a success for Indiana? Because here, you did get a top 5 road win, and you are higher in the Ken Pom ratings now than you were at this point last week, and it's significantly higher, some 8-9 spots higher than you were at this point last Tuesday. But do you look at the week and go, it was a success? Or do you look back in the week and go, man, it wasn't a success. It wasn't a good week for Indiana because you need to defend home court. How do you look at it?
I think it was a success, at least for Archie Miller and the team. Getting his first top 5 win ever, congratulations, Coach Miller. That's a big accomplishment. It's a start of what needs to happen at IU, right? And what needed to happen maybe a year or two ago. But as long as it's happening now, that's fine. We're going to be inconsistent. The Big Ten's hard, right? There's some good teams.
True, it is. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is Rutgers as good as Iowa, like Archie Miller said post-game? No.
Absolutely not.
No, that's
not even close.
That's some Tom Crean DS. I don't.
No, it's not even. It's not even shots fired for no reason at Tom Crean.
I like Tom Crean. Don't get me wrong, but Tom Crean was a bit of a used car salesman at times, and that was very much a used car salesman. Well, guess what? They're all good teams, and anybody can beat anybody, and they're just as good. Get out of here with that. Rutgers was on a 5-game losing streak, just lost to Penn State. Like, are we kidding ourselves here? Like, come on.
Ridiculous.
Come on. So it's a slight win. Now, to me, we saw what happened to Indiana the last time they had a week break, right? They came back out and they played well. They improved. The young players showed improvement. This week, because of some cancellations, Indiana has another week off. They don't play until, I think, Saturday, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Indiana doesn't play until Tuesday now. They have
right.
8 full days off between games. They don't play until a week from tonight. We're recording on Tuesday. I play February 2nd at home against Illinois as things currently stand.
Right. So we have 8 days to prepare for Illinois. So in this time, I would like to see the same level of growth from the young players and the team as a whole as the last time we had a week off. So whatever you did that week, whatever they ate, wherever they went, whatever movies they've watched, whatever Netflix shows they've been binging, there's Attack on Titan or whatever it is, they need to do the same thing, all right? Same thing over again, because the little by little improvement as the season goes on, maybe we'll find some consistency. I sound like a broken record, I feel like at this point, like a crazed human being, but maybe, just maybe, with a week that we can finally look at, okay, what did you do well during the Iowa game? What did you not do well against Rutgers? Why did it not happen?
And that,
but at this point, we're trying to trust the coaching staff, right? And then we're trying to trust a coaching staff that hasn't given us any reason to believe that this is going to actually happen. Like,
no.
The optimist in me is hoping that is the case. So to me, getting the 8 days off after that, yes, the Rutgers game stinks. We had a stinker. We had a great game against Iowa. We had a tournament resume boosting.
Statement win.
Prominent.
Statement win.
So I'll give the edge to that and the rest for it being a good week for Indiana.
Here's why it wasn't a good week.
Okay.
It wasn't a good week because it's Indiana, okay? Bring back the classics, the greatest hits. Okay? It's Indiana. And look, there are a lot of programs out there, okay? And Archie Miller's coached at a lot of them. Ohio State, right? Arizona, Dayton. Where a week like Indiana had, where you went out and you want to go a great road win against a conference opponent, top 5 conference opponent,
right? And
you follow it up with a competitive loss to a team that was frequently ranked in the top 25 until recently in Rutgers. And a lot of programs, 95% of the programs are on college basketball. That would be a good week.
Right.
But it's not at Indiana because this year – Indiana, like you and I talked about it, Matt, we were expecting Indiana to win 20 games this season, 13 or something, 10, 11, 12, 13 in conference play. And we said, look, stagnant success, stagnant results aren't enough.
Yeah.
And you've already dropped 2 games at home that you weren't supposed to drop.
Right.
And then you followed up with a third. And that's exactly why I'm actually siding with the 71% of people who responded to our poll where we asked, look, was it a good week? Well, 71% said no. And that's the type of expectation that's at Indiana. Unrealistic or realistic, I don't know. But that's the level of expectation at Indiana. And I don't think it's unrealistic to expect after you beat a team like Iowa to follow it up with a win against a school like Rutgers. But hey, you know what? The Hoosiers do have some time off. We'll get to that in a moment. But first, it's time for Who Won the Week in IU Sports, where we look around the realm, spectrum of Indiana University sports and pick out a Hoosier that's gone on to do great things this past week. OG Anunoby, our old friend for the Raptors. I know some of you Pacers fans out there might be a little salty about this, but OG dropped 30 on the Pacers on Sunday. And the Raptors went on to beat Indiana on Sunday. But for you Pacers fans, the Pacers did return the favor on Monday against Toronto, limiting Anunoby, and he also suffered an injury to his mouth area. So, and it wasn't a perfect week for Anunoby, but he did drop 30 and had 5 steals against Indiana on Sunday. And so OG definitely won the week. Matt, you also noticed a nice moment with OG Anunoby. We're going to get to that a little bit later on today. But a reminder, if you would like to subscribe to our podcast for free, all you have to do is search for the Hoosier Sound wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay up to date with all of our information by following us on Twitter at the Hoosier Sound. That is at the Hoosier Sound or at Indiana HQ. And of course, if you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. Your support really helps us grow this podcast. That's important because we aren't a big brand. We're not establishment. We're not a big time newspaper. We're not a TV station. We started off like many of you as fans, and we've gone on to do this because we feel like we relate with a lot of you listening to us. So definitely try to reach out to as many passionate IU fans such as yourselves to help us grow. So Matt, now what? Right now what for Indiana? Because you do have a week off. You don't play until Tuesday. Should this team go out and schedule a Power 5 opponent that has time off? Should they try to go out and schedule a low major or even Division II opponent just to get a game in, just to get some more confidence? A team like Maryland has done that a couple weeks ago. St. John's did it a week ago. They scheduled teams like Wingate University and UT Rio Grande Valley, like it's a low major D2 just to get some nice wins, just to get some confidence underneath them? Or do you just say, look, take the time off like you did last week, work on things that you need to improve, and get after the Illini on February 2nd?
Exactly that. I alluded to it previously. I don't understand. Like, I get wanting to add wins in the win column to make your record look nice. And even getting back-to-back wins in 2021 to get that off your back. Like, you could schedule 2 games, and that would be great. Yeah, like, that's fine and all dandy and whatnot. But, like, one, we saw the last time they had a week off, the improvement they had. I assume that'll happen this time, too, especially for the young guys, right? Like, if Lander can replicate what he did last game, starting every game, there's not going to be a lot of games that we lose, because having that kind of a point guard presence off the bench would be great. And scoring off the bench would be awesome. 2, the second and the most important thing about this is that everybody stays healthy. Like, to me, it's like we've had good injury luck so far this year, knock on wood, right? Barring Armand Franklin's, you're going to have one injury here and there. And you had Armand Franklin, and that's been basically it. Let's not play games that don't need to be played. Like, we're playing a bunch of Big Ten games. And then 3, it gives us enough time to get ready for an Illinois game that is, 1, can be a really good win at home. And 2, as a team I've said before, we match up well with. We took, it took an Io Dunsubu going absolutely nuclear handbag, going insane in Champaign.
Yeah. Oh, okay, rhymed.
I did rhyme. I came up with that, and I'm trademarking it right now. He went insane in Champaign, and went off from 3-point. He was just doing everything he could to Indiana. I'm sure Trey Jackson Davis has been playing the clip of Io talking about how bad his hedges are since they played, and I'm assuming that the team will be ready to play them. So you don't need any extra fuel to the fire. You don't need to play any extra games. Just go out, do your thing, develop for a week, and get ready for what is going to be a very important game against the Illini.
I see what you're saying, and I liked my comment. I like the comment that our friend Chris mentioned a minute ago. They should hit Kirkwood hard. Look, as long as you follow all the COVID protocols, a little fun can definitely help. I'm not joking when I say that. It's something that a lot of coaches have touched on as far as one of the biggest consequences of COVID-19. They haven't had sort of those social bonding, different things that they can do to sort of bring a team together, uniting the squad, so to say. Yeah. It's hard. It's hard to do that nowadays. So if, whatever you can do safely to grow that team chemistry is something that I think should be high up on Indiana's list this week. But, as far as scheduling a game, I think there's some merit to that idea. Like, Maryland went out and did that. And they scheduled Wingate University, a private school in North Carolina. You're talking about a team that you could probably beat blindfolded. Okay. And look, the Terps went out and won by 40. Okay. And they did it because, like Indiana, they had a week plus off between games. Now, you're going to look at their schedule and see that after they crushed Wingate, they lost to Maryland by 25, or they lost to Michigan by 24. Okay. Yeah. And I get it. Like, that's ugly. But then they did come back this past weekend and knock off a Gopher squad, a top 20 Gopher squad in Minneapolis by 14. I don't know how much validity, how much correlation there is between Maryland's big win against Wingate and their performance in the game or two that followed. But Indiana's a team that could certainly use a blowout win. They're a team that could certainly use some confidence. If a team like the University of Indianapolis or Wabash College or DePaul or Goshen or whatever, IU South Bend, if those guys want a trip to Assembly Hall to help Indiana work things out a little bit, don't ask IPFW. I need to make that as clear as possible. We're talking D2, low-level, low-major school. Invited to Assembly Hall. I think that could help Indiana. And look, the schedule is ugly. I mean, after you play Illinois, right? We're talking about Iowa back for the rematch in Assembly Hall, and they're probably going to be a little peeved that Archie said.
A little mad. They might. might have them a little bit upset.
Not just that they lost, but Archie Miller said they're Rutgers. Rutgers as good as they are. No big deal. And then you do go to Northwestern, a team that's slumping, but they're confident because they've beaten you already this year. Then Ohio State, Minnesota, Michigan State, Rutgers, Michigan, Purdue. Yeah. So, a little confidence could help. I'm not sure there's a perfect answer to this. We'll see how Archie Miller and the team decides to play this week out. I don't think they quite know. He met with the media, I believe, either Monday or Sunday post game, or it was the coaches show with Don Fisher on Monday, and he said, "Look, we're not quite sure what our schedule has in store." So we'll see how this all plays out. Of course, the reason we're having this discussion is because Indiana's game Saturday against Michigan got postponed because the state of Michigan told the Wolverines, you can't conduct athletics competition because of the new variant of coronavirus that has impacted your program. So that's why we're having this talk. The Hoosiers, again, once again, they're not scheduled to play until February 2nd against Illinois. So it's time for a social media shout out. Matt, we talked about OG Anunoby earlier. What did you see from that weekend against the Pacers that you wanted to shout out here on our Hoosier Sound podcast?
Sure. So Faisal Kamisa on Twitter. He works for I think it's Sport Nation. He works for the Raptors, whatever the television network is in Canada. I can't remember off the top of my head. But when the Raptors lost to the Pacers after OG's great performance, there's a video of OG hanging out with Nate Bjorkgren's kids. Again, why I chose this with all these hard last names, I don't know. But I think it just shows to the character of the kids that come and choose to come to play basketball at IU. Like, this is not something that is, just OG. Like, Romeo's been known to just spend hours signing autographs. Jawan's just the nicest person ever. Like, the character that they, grow up and kind of grows into them and that they learn about at IU playing for the Hoosiers is nothing but beneficial. So this is awesome. And it was really nice to see. Again, he's just like at the end of the games, like calling the kids down, playing with them, giving them fist bumps. Like, that's what sports is about.
That's what it's about, right?
And it was nice to see. So good on OG, had a great night. They lost, but we'll take it.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, and by the way, you mentioned Jordan Sperber earlier. He works at a website called Hoop Vision. We just wanted to get that out there. You can follow him at Hoop Vision 68 on Twitter. He posts a lot of fun videos that sort of open your eyes as far as college basketball is concerned. I also wanted to shout out that Charlton Warren has been officially named as Indiana's defensive coordinator. The school made that official earlier on Tuesday. He's already hit the recruiting trail, offering 2022 safety Emery Floyd. Floyd is a 3-star top, I think it's like top 400 or top 300 recruit in the country. Georgia was one of the teams trying to sign him when Charlton Warren was the defensive coordinator there, but their relationship matters.
Secondary coach at Georgia.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, secondary coach when Warren was there at Georgia, and now with Warren as the DC at IU, looks like he's already trying to get some quality players to come to play for Tom Allen in Bloomington. So keep an eye on that. Indiana extended a ton of offers today, so they're trying to catch lightning in a bottle here as they head into a big 2021 season. So let's head to our final segment or two tonight. Let's start off with a quick preview of Illinois, Matt. Look, the Indiana team's already faced Illinois. We have a full Illini preview on episode 174 of our podcast that is still completely appropriate and valid. You can go back and listen to that. The Illini are number 19 in the AP poll. They're 8th in KenPom. KenPom predicts this to be a 72-71 Illini victory. Matt, I'm not sure if you can take a 1-point loss to Illinois, but what sort of things are you expecting if the Hoosiers and the Illini do play on February 2nd, a week from Tuesday?
I expect a lot of Ayo Dunsumu. That's what I expect. Like, he is one of the best. He's so much fun to watch from a neutral perspective. When he's playing other Big Ten teams, I kind of root for Illinois a little bit, even though that's some blasphemy because IU and Illinois do have a bit of a history and rivalry. But it's still kind of fun. He's a fun player to watch. He's a fun player to watch. And I enjoy watching fun players since IU and recently has not had a lot of fun guards to watch. We're starting to get one in Armand Franklin, right? But, I mean, Don Sumu's great. Kofi Coburn's great. Like, we know they're good players. We know what they're about, right? Yeah. I don't, we've done previews on them the last 2 years. They haven't changed. They've just gotten older. That's it. Right. They've gotten more experience. They're a little bit better and a little bit more consistent at what they do. I'm really excited for this game. I think this is a great opportunity for the Hoosiers. If you're gonna right the ship and get it going in a positive direction towards the end of the year, like, I don't know. The moment to start it was the Rutgers game, but the second best moment to start it is the Illinois game. So
can't change the past now.
Can't rewrite, can't travel back. But yeah, look, and the Illini too, to me, have been one of the more interesting stories in college basketball because everybody had them as like preseason top 10, and then they had a little bit of a rough start. People are like, are they good? And then they go and beat Duke, and then they're like, wow, they're insane. And then we find out Duke's terrible, and then we're like, well, maybe they're not that great. But Illinois to me is a really good team and is going to make probably a really deep run in the tournament, and they'll be fine. I really hope that we finally pull things together and we can beat them on Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a big win. The last two games have been in Champaign both times, and Indiana's played them close. They finally get the return trip to Bloomington. Armand Franklin scored 23 in that matchup earlier this year. Let him cook. Let him, hopefully we get a week to heal here, get that ankle up to speed, and let him try to cook Illinois as much as possible because he's obviously got a world of talent. And I think he's somebody who can take advantage of Illinois' defensive system and do some good things there. So quick, Matt, Indiana, do they win? Do they lose? Because our next podcast will be a week from Wednesday when we record. So we'll see how this game would have gone. Hopefully they're able to get it in. Hopefully they're able to play it. Matt, does Indiana pull off a win against the top 25 Illini squad a week from Tuesday?
Well, I said 0-2 last week, and we won the game that I least expected. So I'm gonna say I'm not expecting anything from this team. I'm gonna say we're gonna lose.
Okay.
But in the hope that we win. So.
Okay. Yeah, and I get that, and the one thing we said last week, as much as we had a pretty tough conversation about Indiana's future, the one thing we said was this team is more than talented enough to beat some good teams along the way. Yeah. And I think they're going to beat a good team along the way on Tuesday. I think they're going to find a way to beat the Illini. Like we said, knock on wood, hopefully this game gets in, they play it. And I just look at the matchups and I see Rob Finney is going to be able to slow down Io DeSumo just a little bit, and I like Trace Jackson Davis and Race Thompson inside against Kofi Coburn. And does the big boy stopper Jordan Geronimo get some minutes in this game? I think Indiana may not be pretty, but I think they're going to find a way to win. So we'll see how it goes. Like I said, long way off. It's a full week from when we're recording this podcast on Tuesday night, but we'll see how this matchup goes against the Illini rivalry game, and it'll be fun to watch. So here's the thing, guys. One of the feel-good stories over the last few years in the Indiana athletic department has been the performance of the women's basketball team. Terry Morin has been the coach at Indiana for 7 years, and she's done an exceptional job breaking down barriers and raising the standard at Indiana, who have had a program that had really struggled for decades and decades. In the first 30 years since the women's basketball in the Big Ten became a real prominent sport in 1983, Terry Morin has changed everything. And if you haven't watched this team before, we're going to fill you in on the things you need to know about the women's program, who are 7-1 in Big Ten play.
Yeah.
They're tied for first in the conference with Maryland, and the Hoosiers overall are off to a rocking start. Just 3 losses this season to teams that are all in the top 25, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Maryland. The Hoosiers are an outstanding basketball team. They were 24-8 last season. They would have made the NCAA tournament if the world didn't end. They made March Madness the previous year, knocking off Texas in the round of 64. A couple years before that, they beat Notre Dame in the round of 64. It was the first NCAA tournament win Indiana had since 1983, which is also the last year they won a Big Ten title. Matt, the Hoosiers on Sunday went to Evanston and beat top 25 Northwestern and ended up crushing them. They won 74-61, even though they trailed by double digits in the third quarter. Let's start at a high level, Matt. If you haven't followed this team yet, who are the key players on this roster that our listeners should look out for when they do tune into an IU women's basketball game?
Yeah, there are 3 main characters on this IU basketball team. There are 3 main players on this team. The first one is our really good sophomore center in Mackenzie Holmes. 18 points per game, 7 rebounds, 2.8 blocks per game. You thought Trace was good? Mackenzie's the same kind of sophomore talent that Trace is, all right? But on the women's side, Mackenzie's great. She's from Maine. She was the Maine Gatorade Player of the Year. She averaged like 30 points per game in high school. She came in last year. She started 2 games. The women's team actually looked really good when she started last year. And then she got her shot this year after some people graduated. And she's really, really taken a hold of that shot. 18 points per game is a really big number, especially from down low. In the women's game, if you don't know, like, centers are the thing. Like we talk about, Sabrina Ionescu is a big story because she shoots the ball really well. But big girls, big-bodied women eat inside in the women's game. They do usually really well. Something that Maryland has been known for as a program for a long time is always having a ridiculously good center. Iowa, the last couple of years, has also had a really good center. Mackenzie's the same way. Really good center. Second best player is Grace Berger. Grace, I believe, is now a junior. 15.3 points per game, 6.2 rebounds per game, 6 assists per game. If that sounds pretty close to a triple-double, you're not wrong. She has 2 this year from the 2 guard spot. She's so good. Grace runs the team really well and gives Allie Patberg, who sits at 12.1 points per game, a lot of rest on the playmaking duty, because the last couple of years, Allie Patberg has been asked to do a whole lot. In the win over Texas last year, or 2 years ago, in the NCAA tournament, Allie ran the show. She was fantastic during that game. She was dishing out assists here and that. But now she doesn't have to do that so much. She doesn't have to always be on the ball. She has now her sidekick, Grace Berger. Both of them really run the show very well. Nithin, did I miss anything?
All in all, I think that was a really good summary. Like I said, they went to Northwestern and won, and it was really funny to sort of compare side by side the Indiana men's team to the women's team, because for a long time those two games were going pretty much identically to one another.
Yeah.
Where Rutgers had gone out to sort of a comfortable 8 to 10 to 12 point lead against the men's team, whereas Northwestern had jumped out to sort of an 8 to 10 to 12 point lead against the women's team. And then all of a sudden, you saw the Lady Hoosiers kick it into another gear. And wow, I mean, Grace Berger was awesome. Mackenzie Holmes was great. Berger finished with 14 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists. Mackenzie Holmes finished with 22 and 10. I mean, this team is really, really good, and you need to watch them because they've got 2 big games coming up this week. They faced a ranked Ohio State squad. And Ohio State, they're number 14 in the country, but on Monday, they beat number 7 Maryland in Columbus in what was an outstanding game over on ESPN2. Ohio State's right there contending for a top spot, contending for that Big Ten title, and Indiana hasn't played them yet. So you can almost think of this game coming up on Thursday as an elimination battle for the Big Ten title, because it's hard to see Maryland losing again. They might stumble once more down the road. The Hoosiers won't get to play the Terps the rest of the season unless the schedule changes. So it is a prime time, big time matchup between 2 top 20 teams. It's 2 top 16 teams. Indiana's number 16 in the AP poll. Ohio State's number 14. Yeah. The 2 squads will square off at 8 Eastern on Thursday night on Big Ten Network. Of course, I'm sure the Fox Sports app will carry that one as well. And then the Hoosiers turn it around on Sunday and play Michigan State at 4:30 Eastern, also at Assembly Hall on Big Ten Network. So the Hoosiers get 2 TV games this week. That is not normal for women's basketball, unless you're a real blue blood like UConn, or, back when the late Pat Summitt was coaching Tennessee, and Notre Dame was wreaking havoc as sort of a nationally known institution. Those schools had their games on TV a lot. It is not normal to see any women's program outside of those high-level blue bloods get 2 TV games in 1 week, and Indiana's going to have 3 in a row. They played on ESPN2 on Sunday, and then these 2 on Big Ten Network coming up. So watch them. If you haven't yet, they're worth your time. They play the basketball that I think a lot of IU basketball fans love to watch. Plenty of ball movement, plenty of player movement, take a ton of jump shots, and they make a lot of them. They're a really good basketball team, and they're going to go deep into March Madness as long as the tournament goes off without a snag. So
yeah, and I hate to compare these things. We just talked about it. Right?
Sure, right. Yeah.
But Terry Morin is the coach that we wanted for IU men's basketball. That she's turned the program around for women's basketball. So she has done really good things. Yes, she's a Purdue graduate. Don't really like that a lot. It's fine. She's our coach now and winning, kicking Purdue's butt in women's basketball. So we'll take it now. It's fine. We'll excuse her for her private allegiances.
Indiana, this Hoosier team, they've been in every top 25 poll since the start of the 2020 calendar year. And what's crazy is before the 2019-20 season, they had been in just 6 AP top 25 polls. They've been in every single one since. They've been in every single one in the 2019-2020 season. They've been in every single one thus far this year. And they're, like I said, they're going to go deep in the tournament. It's too bad fans can't go watch this team because, wow, they play the electrifying type of basketball, hard-nosed basketball that you need to play in the Big Ten. It's a really good conference in the women's game. And the Hoosiers are just going to do even more damage once they play teams across the country in the big dance. So as we wind down, Matt, we talked about a lot tonight. Men's team, women's team, OG Anunoby. What are your closing thoughts as we wind down on this Tuesday evening?
Yeah, a lot of going on in the Indiana sports realm. Lots to talk about, as always. And it's honestly just nice to come on podcasts, with everything going on in the world and just talk about Indiana sports. And I really enjoyed this podcast tonight, Nithin. Thank you for hosting it. And look, I really have a positive outlook for IU basketball in the next couple of days. I really got a little bit of hope, and it's that little bit of hope that I know is going to kill me eventually. It's just going to make me sad. But for now, I'm not going to be the negative Nancy, and I'm going to play into that. So hopefully this week they get better, and we'll be laughing about how I predicted us to lose because I want us to win next week. So,
yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it all goes. I mean, make no mistake about it. Doing what we do is a lot of fun. It's even more fun when Indiana wins. And so we want to be able to bring that to you guys when the Hoosiers do get those W's. I wouldn't say this is being negative, but my memo to the coaching staff here as the season winds down is don't overthink things. Okay? I mean, I think to this point right now, as Indiana's played something 15, 16 games, we kind of know what works, right? Like getting the ball to Trace Jackson Davis works. Moving the ball around the court works. Anthony Leal works. He's a guy in his 14 to 16 minutes is capable of really helping Indiana stretch the court and give defenses something else to think about. Race Thompson's a physical beast inside. And then when you have one or two other players, it could be Rob Finney, it could be Al Durham, it could be Trey Galloway, and on Thursday it was Jordan Geronimo. When you've got one or two players feeling themselves, give them extended run. Let them play themselves out of playing time, because that's what it takes in the Big Ten. You're going to have to throw some curveballs, some changeups, some knuckleballs in order to outsmart coaches like Brad Underwood or Chris Collins or Tom Izzo. So that's what it comes down to. And I hope this IU team's able to reel off a few straight wins, which they found it to be a little difficult to do in recent years. But that about wraps it up for our 179th show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. Thank you to our live audience. You are all beautiful people. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, be sure to follow us at the Hoosier Sound or at Indiana HQ to make sure you don't miss any in the future. You can also go to our website, indianahq.com, to find everything in one place. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we'll see you next time.